Oh God, Merry Christmas again. Yeah, I know I already said it this morning. I told you to go enjoy your families. I told you to turn off the screens. And honestly, I meant to do the same. I was sitting there with a glass of wine trying to ignore the markets for 12 hours. But I would not be turning this camera back on right now if this weren't an emergency. I need you to put down the eggnog for a few minutes. I need you to step away from the noise and look at the hard data that just landed on my desk from the other side of the world. The Chinese silver market just screamed a warning that is impossible to ignore. This isn't a chart guess. This isn't a maybe. This is a mathematical fracture in the global financial system. Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here, I want you to stare at the number I'm about to put on the screen, 8,053s. This is not a typo. This is not a clickbait thumbnail. This is the real verified price of physical silver in Shanghai right now. More precisely, this is the settlement price for the Shanghai Futures Exchange SHFE front month contract A2601, which closed at 18,145 yuan per kilogram right before their holiday break. I'll link the source in the description if I remember. Now pull up your broker app in the US and look at the price there, 71 to 80 dollars. Do you see the problem? That's a $927 per ounce difference. In professional trading, we don't call that a spread. We call that a broken market. And I know the skeptics are watching. I know the trolls are already typing Asian guy. You're just inventing numbers. So let's do the math together. Get your calculator out. I'm using the official SHFE settlement data and the current USD-CNY exchange rate of 7.06. Step 1, take the Shanghai price 18,145 yuan per kilogram. Step 2, convert it to US dollars, 18,145, 7.66 is to 589.92 per kilogram. Step 3, convert kilograms to troy ounces because silver is measured in troy ounces, not standard ounces, not 35, and there are 32. 15 ounces in a kilo. Step 4, divided by 32 life equals $80.55 per ounce. The math is undeniable. So here's what that means in plain English. The largest manufacturing economy on Earth, the country that actually consumes silver to build solar panels and EVs, is valuing the metal at around $80. Meanwhile, the paper market in New York, where bankers trade digital promises, is pretending the price is $71. Now, why is that terrifying for the banks? Because in a normal, healthy market, a gap like this doesn't survive. If silver is $9 cheaper in New York, then every bank, hedge fund, and algorithm on the planet should be buying in New York, flying the metal to Shanghai, and selling it for a risk-free $9 profit. That's called arbitrage. It's the gravity that keeps global prices glued together. Normally, the spread is 50 cents, maybe a dollar in extreme volatility. But 920 cents means the gravity is gone. That means the arbitrage mechanism has snapped. So why aren't the banks closing the gap? Why aren't they buying the cheap silver in New York? There is only one logical explanation: they can't. They can't move the metal because the metal in New York either isn't there to be moved or the logistics chain has collapsed under the weight of Eastern demand. We are watching a market where the paper price and the physical price have officially divorced. And that brings me to why I interrupted your Christmas. Tomorrow morning, the US markets reopen for what we call Ghost Week, the low volume illiquid trading days between Christmas and New Year's. You've got a market with near zero liquidity in New York, and you've got a $9 vacuum pulling the price upward towards Shanghai. Nature hates a vacuum. That gap has to close. And since China isn't going to lower their price when they have a shortage, New York has to rise. We are staring down the barrel of a massive gap up when the algorithms wake up and realize just how mispriced they are. Now, let me explain why this premium exploded in the first place. We have reports pointing at specific industrial sectors in China, solar and EV, that are panic hoarding metal regardless of price. Why would China pay $9 above the global spot price? Why aren't they waiting for a dip? Why are they panic buying at all-time highs? If this were a speculative mania like GameStop or crypto, the buyers would be retail traders chasing a chart. But the volume we're seeing on the Shanghai Futures Exchange is not coming from retail accounts. It's coming from commercial hedging accounts. The whale buying silver in China right now is not a hedge fund. It's not a bank. It's the factory floor. We are witnessing an industrial run on the bank. And unlike a financial run where you just want your cash back, an industrial run is life or death. If you don't get your metal, your factory shuts, your workers go home, your company dies. That's why they're paying $80, because the alternative is zero. Start with the first driver, the one everybody talks about, but almost nobody understands at scale: solar photovoltaics. PV. China controls over 80% of the global solar panel manufacturing supply chain. For years, Western analysts repeated the same lullaby: don't worry about silver demand. Solar companies will thrift it away. They'll use copper. They'll reduce the silver paste. That story just died. I've got a report here from the China Photovoltaic Industry Association CPIA, released just before the holiday, showing that despite the high silver price, silver consumption per watt has stopped falling. They hit the thrifting wall. You can't cut silver content any further without sacrificing panel efficiency. And here's the kicker: TOPCon technology. The industry is rapidly shifting from the old PERC cells to the new TOPCon and 8JT cells. These high-efficiency panels require 50% to 80% more silver than the old ones. So, at the exact moment global mine supply is flatlining the Chinese solar industry, just realize they need more silver per unit, not less. We're seeing verified reports from Jiangsu province, the heart of solar manufacturing, that factories are bypassing standard supply chains. They're not waiting for delivery from refiners. They're going straight to the Shanghai exchange and taking delivery of 15 key bars. They're melting down investment-grade bars to turn them into industrial paste. That is desperation. That is a sector realizing 2026 is going to be a year of famine, and they're eating everything in the cupboard before the year even starts. But if solar were the only engine, maybe the system could limp through. The real panic, the reason the premium blew out to null this week, is coming from the electric vehicle sector. We need to talk about the Samsung shock. Earlier this week, reports circulated about the mass production timeline for Samsung's new solid-state batteries. These batteries are a game-changer: 600-mile range, 9-minute charge time. But the anode isn't graphite, it's a silver carbon composite. The supply-side implications are horrifying. A standard EV uses about 20 to 50 grams of silver for contacts and switches. A solid-state EV uses up to 1 kilogram, 1,000 grams of silver. That's a 20x to 50x jump in silver consumption per car. Now connect that to China. China is the world's largest EV maker, BYD SEAL NIO. Do you think they're going to let Samsung corner the market on next-gen battery tech? No. We're seeing massive block buys of silver originating from Shenzhen and Ningde, where CL is headquartered. These companies aren't building solid-state batteries today, but they are strategic hoarders. They understand that if they want to manufacture millions of these cars in 2027, they need to lock up the silver now. They're treating silver the way people treated lithium in 21, buying the entire mine supply before it even comes out of the ground. When BYD buys silver, they don't buy 5,000 ounces. They buy 5 million ounces, and they are price inelastic. They don't care if it's $70 or $80. They care about controlling the supply chain so they can crush competitors. So we have solar panic plus EV hoarding. What does that do to inventory? Look at Shanghai Futures Exchange SHF warehouse stocks. In 21, these warehouses held over 3,000 tons of silver as of the December 23rd close. Now they're down to less than 800 tons and falling fast. That's a 75% drawdown in visible inventory. And the registered warrants, the metal actually available for immediate delivery, are even lower, practically zero. That's why we're seeing backwardation. Backwardation is a fancy word that means I will pay you more for metal today than for metal next month. Usually futures prices are higher to cover storage. But right now in China, the spot price is trading meaningfully higher than the futures price. The factories are screaming, "Don't promise me metal in February. I don't believe you. Give it to me today." That backwardation is the heartbeat of a squeeze. It's the market admitting there is a physical shortage at the current price level. Now pan back to the West and look at the comics. The traders in New York are staring at charts. They're watching the dollar index. They're drawing Fibonacci retracements. They have no idea what's happening on the ground in Jiangsu. They treat silver like a currency. China understands silver is a strategic technology metal. The West is dumping paper silver at $71 because they think it's expensive. The East is buying physical silver at $80 because they know it's cheap compared to the cost of shutting down a gigafactory. This is the great wealth transfer. Every ounce sold on the comics at $71 is being sucked up, refined, and shipped into a Chinese warehouse where it will never ever be seen again. So what happens tomorrow morning when Ghost Week begins? You've got a New York market with zero liquidity. Bankers are skiing. Inventory is thin. Asahi drained 1.4 million ounces. You have a $9 gap with Shanghai. And now you know who's on the other side of the trade. It isn't a speculator, it's BYD. It's solar giants. They are not going to stop buying because it's Christmas. Their factories run 24/7. If a Chinese industrial buyer decides to hedge January production tomorrow morning, they will hit the comics ask button. And because the order book is empty, the price can jump from $72 to $75 to $78 in the blink of an eye. They will close the arbitrage gap by force. This premium explosion in China isn't a glitch, it's the sound of the industrial supply chain snapping. The factories ran the numbers. They know there isn't enough silver for solar EV AI and investment demand at the same time. So they're playing musical chairs, and right now China is buying all the chairs. But there's a massive hole in this story we haven't answered yet. The question every professional trader is asking right now. If there's a $9 profit on every ounce of silver, why isn't anyone taking it? Think about Wall Street. These are the greediest, smartest, fastest institutions on earth. They run supercomputers built to scalp fractions of a penny in microseconds. If they see silver at 71 in New York and 80 in Shanghai, their biological instinct is to close that gap. They should be buying every bar in the COMEX vaults, chartering cargo planes out of JFK, and dumping silver into Shanghai until prices equalize. It's literally free money. A risk-free trade. So why is the gap getting wider? Why did it go from 2 to 5 and now to 9? The answer is terrifyingly simple. They can't move the metal. We are watching a catastrophic breakdown in the physical logistics of the silver market. The arbitrage engine, the mechanism that keeps global pricing synchronized, has seized up because the fuel is gone. You can trade paper contracts in milliseconds, but you cannot teleport a 1,000-ounce bar of silver. You have to find it, load it, insure it, and fly it. And right now, that supply chain is broken. We've spoken to sources in the logistics industry, specifically those dealing with secure air freight out of London and New York, and they're reporting a complete blockade. It's not that planes aren't flying, it's that metal isn't arriving at the loading dock. The bullion banks are trying to source metal to run the arbitrage. They're calling vaults, they're calling refineries, and for the first time in decades, they're being put on a wait list. Refineries are telling them we're booked solid for 6 weeks. Vaults are telling them we need 48 hours to locate that specific bar serial number. Locate the serial number. In a modern digitized vaulting system, you're supposed to know exactly where every bar is down to the millimeter. When a vault operator tells you they need time to locate your metal, it means one thing. The metal is not where it's supposed to be, or worse, it has been rehypothecated, lent out to someone else, and they're scrambling to find a replacement before you notice. And that brings us to the smoking gun, the hard data proving Western vaults are being drained of their last deliverable ounces. While everyone was distracted by holiday shopping, the COMEX released its inventory report for December 23rd. This is the last official data point we have before the Christmas break, and it is absolutely critical you understand what it says. In a single day, the Asahi Refining Vault in New York saw a withdrawal of over 1.4 million ounces from its registered category. Let me say that again, 1.4 million ounces vanished in 24 hours. Now, you have to understand the difference between eligible and registered. Eligible silver is just sitting there, maybe owned by a private collector or a family office. It's not automatically for sale, but registered silver is the lifeblood of the exchange, fully warranted, ready for immediate delivery to settle a futures contract, the for sale inventory of the entire market. When you see 44 million ounces leave the registered category at Asahi, plus another 600,000 ounces leave the JP Morgan vault, plus another 200,000 ounces leave the CNT vault, all in the same day, you are watching a bank run. You are watching smart money sprint for the exits. And these entities, and we strongly suspect they're linked to the Asian industrial buyers we talked about earlier, aren't playing the paper game. They aren't hedging. They're taking possession. They're backing a truck up to the loading dock in New York, loading it with 1.44 million ounces of physical bars and driving away. That explains why the arbitrage gap won't close. The inventory banks would normally ship to China is already being taken by China. It's a paradox. The very demand pushing Shanghai to $80 is also sucking inventory out of New York, making arbitrage impossible, which prevents the gap from shrinking. It becomes a death spiral for the COMEX. The higher the Shanghai premium goes, the faster metal leaves New York. The faster metal leaves New York, the less liquidity remains to manage the price, and the thinner liquidity gets, the more violent the disconnect becomes. We're also hearing rumors, and I want to stress, these are currently unverified reports from floor traders in London, that the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, is facing administrative delays processing large-scale allocations. Normally, if you have an unallocated account and ask for your bars, it takes a few days. We're hearing reports of delays stretching into weeks. If London is out of metal, then the game is over. London is the main hub, the vault of last resort. If the London float is gone, then the COMEX becomes an island, a paper market trading a derivative of a ghost. That's why the Ghost Week starting tomorrow is so dangerous. New York has been hollowed out. Registered inventory is plunging to historic lows. The float, the actually available metal, is razor thin. And tomorrow morning, the electronic markets turn back on. You have a non-incentive for anyone with physical metal to sell it in Shanghai. But there's no metal left to ship. So what happens if you can't ship metal to close the gap? The only variable left that can move is price. The New York paper price must rise to meet reality. It cannot stay at 71 while the physical world is transacting at $80. The math doesn't allow it. The banks are trapped. They are short paper contracts in New York, but they've lost control of the physical inventory. They're like a poker player who bet the house on a bluff and the other player just turned over a royal flush. The other player is China, and China isn't bluffing. They're taking the chips, they're taking the table, and they're taking the metal. We are witnessing the end of the paper price era. For 50 years, New York told the world what silver was worth. Today, that authority has been revoked. The price is being set on the loading docks of Shanghai, and New York is just a lagging indicator. Now we need to talk about tomorrow morning, December 26th. We are about to watch a collision between two unstoppable forces, the liquidity vacuum of Ghost Week and the price magnet of the $9 Shanghai Premium. Usually, when those forces collide, you get volatility. But this time, because the physical bridge is broken, we're likely to get something much more dangerous, a super gap. First, here's the battlefield. Tomorrow, 90% of senior traders at JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and HSBC are on vacation. They're in Aspen, they're in the Hamptons. Their desks are being run by skeleton crews, junior traders, and automated maintenance algorithms. That means the order book is paper thin. On a normal day, you might have 500 contracts for sale at 71.50. Tomorrow, you might have 50. That is the liquidity vacuum. Tiny money can move price a long way. Now, enter the high-frequency trading algorithms, HFT bots. These machines don't know it's Christmas. They don't know Asahi is empty. They only understand math, and the math is screaming. The algorithm sees asset A Shanghai 8053s, asset B New York 7126, instruction by asset B until price A equals price B. Normally a human would step in and say, wait, we can't ship the metal, don't buy. But the humans are skiing and the algorithms are on autopilot. So tomorrow morning, when Shanghai opens and confirms that $80 price, the New York algorithms will try to close the gap, the only way they know how, by bidding up the paper price. Here is how the squeeze plays out step by step. The trigger, a Chinese industrial hedger BYD or a solar company, places a large buy order because they need inventory. They don't care about the holiday. The vacuum, that order hits the comics. But because it's Ghost Week, there are no sellers at $70.30, no sellers at $71.40. The slip, the order immediately slips up to $72 just to fill the first few contracts. The algo chase the HFT bots, see the jump, see the Nile premium, calculate arbitrage opportunity, and pile in. Suddenly, you have massive buying pressure hitting an empty room. The price doesn't tick at gaps. It skips 73, it skips 74s, it prints 75s within minutes. That's what we call an air pocket. Because physical arbitrage shipping metal is broken, the only way to close the spread is for the paper price to teleport upward toward the physical price. And it gets worse for the banks. We have to talk about Gamma. There are thousands of call options open at the 72 and 75 strikes. The banks sold these calls to speculators. If price gaps to 75 tomorrow, the banks are offside, they're bleeding. To protect themselves, they have to delta hedge. The bank's automated risk engine buys futures. So as price rises, the banks are forced to buy more to hedge losses. But buying more pushes price higher, which forces them to buy more. It's a feedback loop from hell, happening in a market with no inventory to absorb it. You might say, but Asian guy won't. People sell at $7 to take profit. Who exactly? Miners aren't selling. They're holding back supply. The Chinese aren't selling, they're hoarding. The vaults are empty. The only people who might sell are retail traders like you, but are you really going to sell your silver at $75 when you know it's trading at $80 in China now? You're going to hold. You're going to wait for $80. So sellers go on strike, buyers panic, algorithms chase the ghost. So here's what you watch tomorrow morning, December 26th. Don't stare at the news. Watch the spread. If New York opens flat at $71, it's a trap. The explosion is just delayed until volume returns on January 2nd. But if New York opens at 73s or higher, the squeeze has begun. If we break 72 to 50 in the first hour tomorrow, the air pocket is active. We could see $78 before lunch. The market is trying to tell you something. The discount window is closing. The $71 price is a lie. The $80 price is the truth. And the lie is about to be violently corrected. Now, let's assume the squeeze actually happens. Let's assume Ghost Week closes the gap and New York wakes up at 80. Skeptics will say, okay, that's the top, bubble's over, sell everything and go home. They're wrong because they're misunderstanding what this is. $80 isn't the ceiling, it's the new floor. What we're seeing, the violent decoupling between East and West, is not just a trade. It is the end of an era, the end of the Western discount. For 50 years, New York and London set silver's price and used paper contracts to keep it convenient for Western banks. But today, with Shanghai printing $853, that era is over. Pricing power moved east and China isn't trying to manage price. China is trying to secure metal. Once New York capitulates and matches $80, the suppression mechanism breaks permanently. To understand why price can go higher than $80, you need to understand the psychology of a CEO. For the last 30 years, global industry ran on just-in-time inventory. If you were Samsung or Tesla or a solar manufacturer, you didn't stockpile silver, you trusted the market. You trusted that if you clicked buy on Tuesday, the metal would arrive on Wednesday. But what happens when the premium hits $9? What happens when vaults run dry? Trust evaporates. The world shifts from just in time to just in case. Every industrial CEO seeing a $9 spread thinks the same thought: if I don't buy 6 months of inventory right now, I might not get it later. That creates a hoarding supercycle. It doesn't matter if silver is $80. If you're building a 50,000 electric car and it needs 80 worth of silver, you pay it. If silver goes to 150 and the car now needs 150 worth of silver, does demand die? No, because you just added $70 to a $50,000 product. It's irrelevant to the sticker price, but critical to function. Silver is inelastic, and in an inelastic market, when confidence breaks, the price doesn't just double, it adds a zero. Now consider the banks, the paper masters. Their whole game relied on one bluff: if you buy futures, we can deliver the metal. The $80 Shanghai price calls that bluff. If banks try to short silver at 80 to cap price, the arbitrage bots will buy the paper, take delivery and ship it to China. The banks can't suppress anymore because they would instantly bleed physical metal. The cap is gone. The artificial ceiling that kept silver under 30, then under 50, has been removed. We're entering pure price discovery. And in price discovery, price must rise high enough to do one of two things: destroy demand or create supply. Destroy demand. Solar and tech need silver. They can't just swap it out on command, so demand is sticky. Create supply. It takes 10 years to permit and build a new mine. Even if silver hits $200 tomorrow, meaningful new supply doesn't arrive until 2035. So for the next decade, price has to do the heavy lifting. $80 is the wake-up call. 25 to 150 is the equilibrium needed to balance the deficit. So here's my forecast for the reality of 2026. We will watch a bifurcated market dissolve into a unified bull market. Right now we have two prices, 71 and 80. By January we'll have one price, 80 plus. Once that merge happens, Western investors, pension funds, retail stackers will realize the shortage is real. They've been sidelined, afraid of the bank smackdown. But when they see the banks are powerless, when they see $80 holding as support, investment capital floods in. Industrial panic is the floor. Logistics breakdown is the squeeze. Investment FOMO is the rocket fuel. That's the recipe for a move that makes 1980 look like a warm-up. But there's a danger here. Not a danger of a crash, but a danger of psychology. When silver hits $80, your brain will scream, "That's too high, sell." You've been trained to think 30 is high and 50 is the top. You have to rewire your brain for the new reality. In a world where the dollar is dying and China pays 80 for strategic metal, 80s is cheap. 80 is the new $20. If you sell at 80, you're trading a scarce strategic asset for a depreciating paper currency at the exact moment the asset is about to go vertical. You're selling your ticket on the lifeboat just as the ship starts to sink. So the squeeze is inevitable. The gap will close. The price will re-rate. The question isn't if, it's how you survive it. How do you navigate a market that moves $5 a day? How do you avoid getting shaken out by volatility? How do you protect your stack when dealers run out of inventory? I'm going to give you 3 specific strategies for the retail investor to maximize this opportunity without getting wrecked by the chaos. The easy money has already been made. Now comes the hard money, the volatile money. When silver was boring at 25, it was easy, you bought it and forgot it. But next week, when silver whips between $72 and $80, when your portfolio swings by tens of thousands in an hour, that's when mistakes happen. That's when weak hands get shaken out. That's when banks try to steal your position one last time before the real move to triple digits. Your biggest enemy right now is your own brain, because your brain is anchored. For years, you've been conditioned to believe 30 is expensive and 50 Rs is the moon. So if we gap to $80 next week, your brain will scream, "Sell, take profits, it's a bubble," and you have to silence that voice. You have to understand the dollar price is a lie. If you sell your silver at $80, what do you get back? Fiat currency. A currency the Federal Reserve just admitted they have to debase to save the debt market. A currency China is actively dumping. If you exchange a scarce strategic asset, silver, for a depreciating liability, dollars, you aren't taking profit. You're jumping off the lifeboat and swimming back to the Titanic. Stop obsessing over the dollar price. Start watching the gold to silver ratio. Right now, the ratio is around 60 to 1. Gold is about 4 to $200. Silver is about 71. Historically, in a true monetary reset or supply crisis, that ratio compresses to 15 to 1. Until silver is 1/15th the price of gold, it is fundamentally undervalued. Don't even think about selling until the ratio is screaming at you. $80 isn't the signal. Second, next week, during Ghost Week, volatility will be nauseating because liquidity is so thin. We could see a flash crash. You could wake up Tuesday and see silver down $4 in a single minute because an algo dumped a block of futures. The media will scream silver crash bubble burst. Your phone will flash red, ignore it. Remember the Shanghai price. Remember industrial panic. If spot prints $68 on your screen, ask yourself a simple question. Can you actually buy physical metal at $68? Go check the online dealers. Call your local coin shop. I guarantee they won't be lowering prices, they'll be raising premiums. They know the physical market is broken. If the paper price crashes, it's a gift, the fake price diverging from the real price. Don't get stop lost out of your position by a paper game. If you hold physical, you're immune to the flash crash. You hold the ounces, not the contract. If you hold miners or ETFs have conviction, the paper price must eventually reconnect with physical reality 80 plus. Third, and this is the most practical advice I can give you, we're racing toward the point of unobtainium. As the arbitrage gap widens, the flow of metal from west to east accelerates. We're hearing major US dealers are already running low on 100-ounce bars and sovereign coins, Eagles, Maples. There is a very real chance that in January 2026, the buy button disappears. You'll open a website and everything will be out of stock or pre-order only. 6 to 8 weeks delay. When that happens, the number on the screen becomes irrelevant. It won't matter if spot is $80 or $100 if you can't buy any. So the strategy is simple. If you have cash on the sidelines that you intend to put into silver, do it now. Don't try to time the dip next week. Don't try to save 50 cents. Secure the ounces while they're still available for immediate delivery, because once Ghost Week closes the gap and headlines break about the $80 Shanghai price, a retail stampede will clear out remaining inventory in 48 hours. And I want to close this with why we're even talking about it. It's not just about making money. We are living through a historic pivot point. For 50 years, the Western financial system used paper derivatives to suppress the price of real assets, keeping silver cheap to subsidize their industries and their currencies. But the East, China, India, Russia, the BRICS has called the bluff. They're draining the vaults. They're demanding physical delivery, and they're forcing the world back toward a system based on reality.